Mini episode 1257 of the FDH Lounge is brought to you by Sportsology, delivering unconventional columns and webcasts about sports, TV, music, movies, and more. Follow them on the web at sportsology.com.
The FDH Lounge. You'll want to schedule your life around it.
A long time ago, on a gloomy, wet Cleveland spring night, two men stand alone amidst the late-night drizzle. Their voices echo across the vacant station parking lot as they debate the merits of the great American radio show that have been missing for far too long. On that night, an idea was born. That idea became the FDH Lounge. Welcome to the FDH Lounge.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to FDH Lounge mini episode 1257. This is FDH Managing Partner Rick Morris here with you, and this is part 26 of our Coronavirus Crisis 2020 series. We are taking a look, of course, at all things affecting society during this time, and today we are talking about a Stanley Cup Playoffs like none other under the circumstances here. And longtime FDH Lounge Dignitary / Sportsology proprietor / author Russ Cohen is with us as per always to talk hockey under the circumstances as the season, of course, the regular season coming to an end in mid-March during the coronavirus crisis in the early days of it in the United States and Canada. And subsequently went through one flare-up, and we're in a little bit of another one here, but up north, where it's been better contained, the season is still over with the playoffs, and expanded playoffs are about to begin August 1st, and this will be running, of course, parallel to the NBA playoffs and finals, which we will be covering here probably in our next mini episode on the show with FDH Lounge Dignitary Ben Chu. So a lot of similarities between the two events and how they're going to be going forward, both of which in a bubble, which I have long said any sport not looking at doing a bubble right now is pretty much insane. And again, the NHL has that going, Russ, but what are your general kind of overall thoughts on how this thing is getting revived and circumstances unlike any that we've ever seen before, and hopefully like none that we'll ever see again for these reasons?
Yeah, I was just on a call with the NHL, and that was interesting because they really did get into great detail about the bubble and everything else that it entails. But the biggest takeaways for me, and people could always go to sportsology.com and read my entire article, but the biggest takeaways for me were like families that want to come, they have to wait till the conference final and the final, and they'll have to do their part at home, not to mix too much with the public, and that might cut down the quarantine period when they get there. But when they get there, when they start questioning them, if the NHL experts are there feel like they are a little bit at risk, they might have to quarantine longer. And so, that's a whole process that maybe the families probably didn't know they'd have to take part in. So it's not like they could just walk into the bubble and just start walking into the arena. Not that easy. So there is that. They're taking painstaking measures for that. They're taking painstaking measures for the players. They're taking painstaking measures for workers, employees of the league, employees of the hotel, all of that. They're eating all of that expense, which, again, I remember Bettman saying a couple of calls ago that's probably tens of millions. And this is all so they can finish the season because, A, they really want to finish the season, B, television contract, C, new television contract. So, there's a lot on the line, and they're really going to beef up basically the technology for fans to watch at home. And I think that's a big deal because, unfortunately, with Major League Baseball, the regular broadcasts from, your home team, they didn't do much to give you something else at home other than a cardboard cutout and some plugged-in noise.
Right.
The NHL is going to do a lot more than that. They've got massive LED screens. They're going to use, all the sounds that EA Sports has in their library for games. That's going to be their plugged-in sound. They are going to do a lot. And so that is a big deal, too, because they realize, hey, they're using more cameras. There's people not in the way of cameras. They could actually make this different and possibly better than we've ever seen before, where Major League Baseball just took the tact of, hey, you know what? We're just going to give you some fake people, a little bit of noise, whether we give you, cardboard cutouts or CGI, and then it's just going to be the game the way it is. Enjoy. So it's a big difference between, like, two of these sports. The NBA, I think, is doing a lot what, like, the NHL is more better than what MLB is doing, which is almost nothing.
Yeah, the MLB stuff, especially with the CGI fans, that's kind of creepy. I mean, the cardboard stuff, okay. Yeah. The CGI fans are kind of creepy. There was one today. I forget which game it was. Somebody put a screen capture up on Twitter, and one of the CGI guys was like man-spreading. I was like, really? Now CGI guys are doing that too? It was bad. Yeah, I do enjoy that. That is pretty funny. But this is a thing where you're saying with the NHL, families can't come up until the conference finals. So, in other words, none of the family members of the Chicago Blackhawks need to get their passports renewed then.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And and unfortunately, we did hear that Corey Crawford had COVID, and so I think he's going to make it on the travel part. But I think it's going to be close. I haven't heard definitively one way or the other. So that's another thing that could derail the Blackhawks a little bit. But the other big development is just the way that the doctors are sort of treating everything. It's probably more than you thought. With 1,500, I think, league employees and 1,000, it's 150 league employees and over 1,000 people. I think it's 1,500 people in total. There's like basically a health center, like in Edmonton, as an example, that will be testing people all the time. It's an actual health center. It looks like like a patient first kind of place. So that's kind of incredible, the steps they're taking. Just for your daily checking, like they don't have a mood ring like the NBA, but what they have is everybody on their phones is using that clear technology, the stuff that you see at the airport that helps you cut the line. Yeah, they're using that to gauge temperature and overall wellness, and that'll be like once you get through the checkpoint on that, the phone will just scan, that'll just scan you through. So that's another nice feature that they're doing. You can only do so much. Obviously, this could all still blow up, but I do feel like the plan's pretty good. Might be the best in all of sports.
Well, as far as the players and dealing with the virus and that kind of stuff, this is something we've talked about previously on the show here, and I feel like the next couple of weeks are going to mark a learning point somewhat. I mean, I'm not going to over-dramatize this and say we're going to learn a whole ton about the virus, but as far as after effects, seeing it with a professional athlete, with players who have to have, let's say, for example, very good lung capacity going forward, we've been hearing all these things about after effects in patients, even patients that didn't have a real bad case of it at the time. So you look at in the NBA, Rudy Gobert, I guess he's come back pretty good so far with Utah.
Yeah.
By the way, they're doing the same thing with the courts there, with the extra decoration, with the video screens. That is the way to go to keep it from looking like a completely empty gym. Yeah, it's a good way to do it. But somebody like him, who supposedly had, not...
And more, sorry, not to interrupt, and more cameras, like the NHL's using 35 cameras a game or something.
Yeah, that's... The NBA and NHL coverage actually might be a little bit better than usual because of... And why shouldn't it be, right? It's not like you got to move this stuff around from arena to arena. You kind of... The NBA is using 3 arenas in Orlando. The NHL has the 2, but still, it's not like you got to move them from place to place. But anyways, it's a thing where... if Rudy Gobert can come back and play pretty good when, by all accounts, he had, and not a severe case, I don't think he was hospitalized or anything like that, but he was one of these guys that had a case of it that was pretty bad. So if we see athletes go out there in the NBA, NHL, and to whatever extent MLB, I mean, there's less cardio involved than MLB, but if we...
Freddie Freeman's a good example. Like, he almost hit a home run yesterday playing against the Mets, so he looks pretty good, and he had it.
Yeah. So it's a thing where it will tell us, because in talking off air earlier today with FDH Lounge Dignitary Ben Chu, we've been kind of going back and forth on these things in the media about after effects and people, whatever. Again, the media loves to sensationalize and scaremonger. Are they cherry picking the exceptions to the rule, or those of us that eventually get it, is this something we can look forward to subsequently, which is one of the reasons I've been laying so low, is I ain't looking to get something and carry it around the rest of my life. So these athletes may have a lot to tell us, Russ, even though they're young and healthy. By the same token, they're also the ones where even a little bit of adverse lung capacity, adverse here, adverse there, could compromise their careers. So if we see all these athletes, even the ones that have had it, going back out performing as they normally would, I think that'll tell us some positive things about once the virus is behind you.
Yeah, no question. I don't want to say all these athletes can teach us something because, boy, some of these Major League Baseball players came back with massive guts. Like, some of them were not in great shape. I mean, so I can't give them all that credit.
Well, I meant they might be medical examples as far as recovering from coronavirus, but yeah, as far as physical specimens, yeah, I mean, not to pick on Pedro Sandoval because he's gotten enough of that for one lifetime, but he's a guy who, again, Kung Fu Panda coming back in the way that he has previously sometimes, but when you look at this here, again, I did a little bit of prep in getting ready for this segment, and I got to tell you, I knew next to nothing about what the setup was in Toronto and Edmonton prior to today. But in looking
let me give you one more thing.
Yeah.
I was going to give you one more thing, and then you can mix that with your thoughts.
Yeah.
The other thing that's kind of interesting, because a lot of us didn't really know until this last call. So we were thinking, wow, Edmonton, why aren't they picking Toronto for all the big games and not Edmonton? Well, it looks like, because Edmonton's newer, they've got more backstage room. So that's a part of it. And then the other part of it is, once they sort of decided on the place, they did a major build. I mean, they did a presentation in the NHL the day before the big call, and when they did that, on the video you could hear like saws and things cutting and then building it. And what I liken that to is like when WrestleMania comes into town and they sort of just set up there for a while and do all these shows. They're basically doing the same thing. That's exactly what they're doing.
Sure. And from the stuff that I was reading up about today, and from no doubt what you heard on the call, it was explained, I'm sure, there about the perimeter that's being set up around the arena, and the fact that, again, because I was thinking to myself, this is not going to quite be like the NBA one where they're on a campus, except it sounds like they are creating campuses here, where you have the hotels, you have the arena nearby, you have restaurants within the perimeter. And I got to admit, one of my first thoughts on this, and this is not from me being an elitist. I am a lifelong resident of America's North Coast, Cleveland, so I'm not looking down my nose when I say this, but my first thought was Edmonton. Everybody
you live in the Cleveland suburbs, though. I know you do.
Well, true, yeah, in the ritzy suburbs in the Southwest, yes. But, no, it's one of these things where I'm thinking to myself, the players were probably thinking to themselves in the Western Conference, they drew the short end of the straw. Like Edmonton, like, what are you going to do, stay in a Motel 6 when you're there? But I guess theoretically, if you got arenas downtown, the arenas downtown, hotels near there, theoretically, I don't know if it's the same mint on the pillow that you get in a world-class city like Toronto, but probably close enough, eh?
It's close enough. Look, yeah, Toronto's got the better hotels. I don't think there's any question about it. But Edmonton does have one, the JW Marriott, that was built about a year ago, right after the rink, and that one's very close to it. It's on the outside of it, but it's very close. That one's probably posh, so that one is probably where the better teams are going to stay. And then, you start spreading out, and some of the other teams are going to be in a little bit of a lesser hotel. And hopefully nobody complains about the bedspread like J.R. Smith.
Well, J.R. Smith will always have a fond place in my heart because 2016, but yeah, I can't defend a lot of his other stuff. And again, the whole spoiled nature of this, and NBA players per capita, I think, are going to be a lot more prone to that kind of stuff than NHL players who have the reputation for being so.
There's some, though. Don't worry. Every type of athlete, there's going to be some, and there's going to be some tweeting. They get there on Sunday, and I think it's early as Wednesday they start playing their preseason game. They're going to a couple of warm-up games. Everybody's got at least one warm-up game. So we're going to hear some stuff, I'm sure.
Well, absolutely. But again, NHL players compared to NBA or other sports have the reputation of being the most down to earth, and it's a thing where this during a previous segment on the show, I complained about it with our fellow dignitary Ben Chu about the over the top nature of when the NBA players got to Orlando and they were part of the quarantine. They had, of course, prepackaged food, and we're hearing these overwrought comparisons to Fire Festival food. Like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding? Everything that is being done for your protection, for your safety, and you have the gall to complain about your rooms and compare it to the Fire Festival. And then I don't know if you heard about this today. This came out just not too long ago, but good old Sweet Lou Williams getting questioned now for slipping out of the area there and going to a strip club already.
You know? There you go. You knew that was going to happen.
Well, yeah, and that's a thing where, you know, that's the one thing that can blow it up in both of those zones there, you know, for the NHL and the NBA is human error.
Yeah, there are severe fines in the NHL, and they're going to do contract tracing, which I think would be embarrassing if a guy is married and all of a sudden he's got to explain to the league where he's been, and they've got to call those people. So you would hope that some of the guys would stay away from that, and then they would have to go through another quarantine period. So I think the NHL players are going to be smarter than that. I do. And actually, there's a point where after the 14-day point that they're at the place, if they have a day off, they may have some excursions where they're allowed to go to places as a group. And so that's good. They don't want them to get stir crazy. You know, they're going to, you know, give them some perks once they've proved their bubble worthiness, for lack of a better term.
Right. And, you know, I have to say also that I'm hoping, too, that maybe Jared Kiso finds a way to get inside the quarantine with a camera. Maybe get a couple of Letterkenny vignettes out of this while we're at it. That would be tremendous. But as far as the play on the ice, going through here, and we're going to be putting up at fantasydrafthelp.com in the next couple of days here, a playoff breakdown, and I went and did a statistical breakdown, was looking at the teams here and how they played out in a number of different categories. Long story short...
You know the Red Wings aren't playing, right?
I do know this, yes. Sadly enough. Well, here's the thing, Russ Cohen. This is coming back, and I remember it was sometime, like in the 2000s, both of my winter teams, the Red Wings and Cavs, would sometimes be riding high at the same time. And then in the 2010s, it tended to be at different intervals here. And now, both sports are coming back, and both of my teams are sitting here making plans for next year. Yeah. They have a lot in common. Yeah. So, in looking at the breakdown on this, so tell me if this surprises you any of the, let's say, the three top tiers that we have in terms of breaking down the numbers here. Where there tends to be a little bit of a break in this. 1, 2, 3, your top tier, Boston, Colorado, Tampa Bay. Your your second tier is number 4, St. Louis by itself. And then the third tier, 5 through 8, Carolina, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Washington. Any of those teams surprise you as far as where they come out?
Yeah, I think Philly's probably a little higher than many of us thought. I thought they'd be a playoff bubble team, and they did a little better than that. The Capitals have been up and down. I still think they can come out of the East, but they've been very unmotivated at times and played some lazy hockey, even with all the talent. So I'm not sure if it's Weirden, if he's not motivated these guys enough, that they just need their backs against the wall. I'm not sure what it is. So, and Holtby now is probably going to play his last go-round here with the Caps. That's my guess. So I think that's the one where they're probably the biggest surprise.
Yeah, and in looking at that, that's been a thing where, again, I know you're a lot closer to the action on the day-to-day of the NHL than I am, but, I mean, one of the big surprises coming into this whole thing, I think if you're looking at from the regular season coming in, is just the drastic drop-off with Holtby this year. What's basically the story behind that?
I can't tell you the whole story. I think it has a lot to do with the defense in front of them. And like I said, there have been games where they're just not plugged in. And I watched the game with a Caps reporter, maybe pointed out everything that they were sort of not doing or doing, and, you know, the Flyers in that game were just taking them apart because they just weren't competing well, especially on defense. So I think that has affected Holtby. Holtby does need a certain amount of structure in front of him, and I don't think he's been getting it.
Well, they're an odd kind of a thing. There's a lot of noise in the statistics when you look at Washington because of the different statistics going into our formula here at FDH. You look at that, and they came out this year 6th in the penalty kill, 10th in the Fenwick against, 16th middle of the pack in even strength goals against. So there's nothing there that is nearly as crappy as the 28th in save percentage would lead you to believe. So it's an odd statistical picture.
Yeah, I think when they win games, they win them convincingly, and when they were losing, they lost them convincingly, and I think that's what the problem is with that.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, that is kind of atypical for a team to be as up and down as that. Really, really talented type team, and a team that, again, is going to get a bye into the second round of the playoffs. This whole thing, of course, with the 24 teams in the playoffs, you've got 5 through 12 seedings in each conference, a best-of-5 series, as the top 4 seeds in each conference play a round-robin sort of Olympic style here, and then they'll be seeded 1 through 4 coming out of that. So it's going to be it's an odd kind of a way to deal with it, and with the extra teams in there. And clearly they wanted the top teams in each conference to have some games going on while the best of 5 was going on. I don't know that it was necessary, though, that they be games that meant anything. You could have just as well played exhibition games. They chose not to go that route.
Yeah, they did. Another interesting thing is, even though there's no fans there, Edmonton and Toronto are going to play 2 games on home ice in their own locker room.
Right.
But if it's a part of a back-to-back, just because they have the home locker room, they may have a different bench. They may not have the home bench.
Right.
Because they're going with, like, World Cup of hockey rules, so that could change things a little bit. So there is a little bit of home ice advantage there. Not as tremendous as the league did as much as they could to sort of mitigate it, but it is there. I think it's worthy of pointing out.
Yes, I mean, and a certain amount of that is going to be unavoidable as far as how that goes. I know that just like in the NBA, it's going to be a deal where the home team is going to have, their special effects going, I guess, for lack of a better thing. They're going to try to replicate the home experience in that way. So that's a commonality between the bubbles and the different sports here.
Right. Like, as an example, didn't Cleveland copy Dancing Harry with, like, Dancing Larry back in the day?
I think so, probably, yeah. Our
so. You just don't want to admit to it.
Well, our in-arena experiences, I gotta say, I'm not going to defend them in any sport. They're always pretty hacky, but I get the sense these days, Russ, that they're kind of hacky no matter where you go. In-arena experiences, what they play, what they... generally speaking, I'm get off my lawn guy when it comes to that kind of stuff. And would just as soon not have as much of it. But they're going to try and replicate that just to make it seem a little bit more lively here. And again, to try to give some kind of teeth to it, because, again, there is, when you talked about that, as far as the home benches and everything like that, and then, yes, the quote-unquote home team getting to, set their lineups, in the preferable way. But this system really, 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 on the whole, diminishes home ice.
Yeah, for the most part, it pretty much crushes it, I think. I mean, it's a little thing. Maybe players will get that little, the one thing I think game 1 in your own locker room for a playoff game is a nice little edge, though. I have to say that.
Yeah. Well, that's true. That's true. They will have that. And again, a certain amount of this is unavoidable. You're playing on neutral ice, aside from Toronto and Edmonton, who, again, like you said, they're going to try and mitigate the fact that it is home ice for them every time out in there. In looking at this here, I didn't see in the first round, and I guess this is not too surprising when you're extending it down to 12 teams that would not normally be probably even sniffing the playoffs toward the end of the regular season. I didn't see too many series where I thought there was too much of a chance for an upset. The teams that I like the best as far as a chance for an upset, I would say, would be the Islanders over Florida, Arizona over Nashville, and this may not surprise you to hear Winnipeg over Calgary. Any teams where you think they might be ripe for a first-round upset?
No, I actually agree with all those three. Florida, it goes back and forth. I think, unfortunately, that Islanders-Florida series is going to be more focused on the coaches than it will be on the players. I think it's more because there's two potential Hall of Fame coaches there in Quenneville and Trump, and I just think there's going to be more focus on the coaches than there actually will be on the players. I could be wrong about that, but that's just my gut feeling. So that one, if Florida is playing their game and Bobrovsky is actually back to being his old self and not that guy we saw this year, they can win the series, but that's a big if. So that's why I'm going to give the edge to the Islanders.
Yeah, I would agree. Those are the upsets that I have picked in the first round, and then going through the rest of the field, I don't.
By the way, I don't think the Coyotes is that big an upset. I don't.
Really? Now, that's interesting. Okay, yeah, I've got them winning in 5. I think that one's going to go the distance there, but I think that there are, again, I found myself being a little bit surprised making that pick, but as you say, I mean, they are fairly evenly matched. This is not the Nashville team of years past, which a lot of it is. They have been...
And the goaltending's a little shaky, and their goal scoring is not that great, and if Taylor Hall sparks here and gets a new contract, that could look pretty good for Arizona. Because Arizona's goaltending, now that Kentner's back, is better than Nashville, believe it or not.
Yeah, it is. And Nashville, I mean, and this is something you can probably relate to as a lifelong Ranger fan. The Rangers, for many years, built so disproportionately around Hank Zetterberg. Then he gets a little older, and there you go. Kind of the same thing with Nashville. They have leaned on Pekka Rinne heavily for a long time. The guy.
You said Zetterberg, but you meant.
The brain fart. No, you're right. You're right. Boy, am I tired. But no, obviously. Oh, that is a Freudian slip for the ages right there, as far as the wrong King Hank. But it is really almost it's kind of the same dynamic there as far as Nashville. You got Rinne at what age? 37. It's going to happen.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So
no question.
Yeah, a little bit of the same thing happening there. And I think in looking at it here that with Nashville, and again, you talk these mysteries and stuff. You look at the year when they were in the Stanley Cup final. What was it, 2017? And you look at because you were talking about the scoring, and there's been some issues with that. Like, you look at the development of like Arvidsson and Forsberg and a couple of these guys. I mean, that development has not been the straight line up that they thought it was going to be, for sure.
No, it hasn't. They missed Kevin Fiala, and Ryan Johansson's been Kyle Turris has been and that's hurt him too.
Yeah, it has, and you can't afford to have a couple of these guys end up being guys that you would end up missing on. And, it would be quite an indignity for them to lose to an 11 seed, but it could very well happen. I think Nashville is very, very lucky to be a 6 seed, quite frankly. You look at this as it goes along, I don't see nearly as many opportunities for upsets in the second round because I alluded to those 8 teams earlier that appear to be a strong statistical cut above the other teams here, and with the exception of 5 Carolina and 6 Pittsburgh in the rankings here, the other 6 teams are teams that are getting the first round buys. So unsurprisingly, those teams, I would have them moving on in this. We get to the conference finals, and I've got it being a couple of the traditional powers the last couple of years in the East. I've got Tampa over Washington and Boston over Philly in the West. I've got St. Louis over Edmonton and Colorado over Dallas. Is that the same Final Four you got, or do you see anybody else sneaking in there?
I still think Washington could sneak in there. I don't know if Philly will get quite that far. Maybe Washington will be the team that beats Philly, even though Philly's played them very well the last couple of years. But I just think Washington could really get on the roll because they have the right guys, and they're not that far removed from a cup team. I also think that before what we were talking about with the conference final, Rangers Carolina, I just don't think David Quinn's going to go with Lundqvist at all, which I really would because of his career record is just amazing against Carolina. But I think he's going to just go with Shesterkin, who, he's a better young goalie, but he's really untested in NHL playoffs. And so that, if Shesterkin were to lose 2 in a row, they would have to go to Lundqvist, and that could hurt Quinn. Look, Carolina's got great defense. They're stronger down the middle. If they get any kind of goaltending, and I mean any kind, if they get NHL average goaltending, they're going to win that series. And I honestly think Columbus is going to be believed. I do. I'm turned around on that. Torts has done an amazing job. They've got everybody back, all hands on deck, and basically because the Leafs are not going to open up the throttle offensively, and they're going to try and play the best defense they can, Torts is going to out-Torts them for that kind of game. I really see it happening.
Yeah, I went back and forth on that one. The Toronto-Columbus one, I certainly see it going 5 games. I agree with you on the outcome of Carolina and the Rangers. And, yes, they would be turning to, let us clarify again, Hank Lundqvist in goal, not Hank Zetterberg. that is a classic. But in looking at this here, the team is likely to move on. I have, in terms of the seedings, my predictions would be on that in the East. 1 Tampa, 2 Boston, 3 Philly, 4 Washington. In the West, 1 St. Louis, 2 Colorado, 3 Dallas, 4 Vegas. And it's a coin flip. It's a small sample size. Those could go any different way. But so I've got essentially, when you're looking at a matchup for the finals, what would be...
Well, the one thing I wouldn't necessarily count Pittsburgh out. I really wouldn't. They're going to sweep Montreal. I don't know who they would get in the second round. If they get past the second round, I don't think anybody's going to want to face the Pittsburgh Penguins, to be honest.
I got Washington taking them in 7. I think that would be an epic series.
Well, it would be an epic series, and the big thing to note for that is I went to Game 7 the last time they matched up when Washington beat them, but I only think Washington won because Phil Kessel was hurt. Phil Kessel in that game was trying to skate before the game started, and I could see that he wasn't right. He played, but I think he only played like 12 minutes or 13 minutes, and he wasn't a factor. And I really believe that was the reason that the Capitals were able to beat him, because Pittsburgh really did need that extra scoring out of Kessel that they couldn't get because he was too banged up. So I think if they matched up again, Pittsburgh can beat them. They really can. I mean, that would be a good series, though. You're right.
Yeah, and, Kessel's like Popeye with those hot dogs. Maybe somebody should have put a couple hot dogs down his gullet before the game, and, might have worked out a little better, but...
Well, maybe if they eat the hot dogs without the bun, it'll be better.
Well, true. Yes. It's a healthier way, as they say.
If it ketos it,
yeah. and now I've got this stuck in my head that we need a Twitter character, Keto Phil Kessel. That would be awesome.
There you go.
Just talking about eating hot dogs without the buns. I have to say, I'm looking at this here, my predictions for when we get deeper and deeper into this, I'm finding myself being amused by the notion that we are sitting here a year later with a completely different landscape. There's never been a more, even if you go 66 to 67 from before the original 6 to what it ended up being there, 2019 to 2020. Never been a bigger difference in landscape between one playoffs and the next. And yet, I find myself being amused by this. My pick in the finals is St. Louis and Boston. I got number 2 Boston over number 1 Tampa Bay in 7. Number one St. Louis over number 2 Colorado in 7. And more continuity. I got St. Louis over Boston in 7 in the finals. So the more things change, the more they stay the same.
That's funny. I mean, look, I think this is Alex Petrangelo's last go-round with St. Louis, and St. Louis is healthy now, and we can't now, now we could actually say, hey, they've got a great chance of repeating like the Red Wings simply because they've had all this time off. Like they're not going to have that same grind that a returning NHL champ would have. So to me, that increases their chances. So that's a pretty good thing for them. So I look at that and I say, there's something there. There's a good chance for them. But Boston's got a lot of guys. Like right now, we don't know COVID. We don't know what it is because when the league's not letting us know, so teams hide it now. I saw Pasternak is likely going to travel, and that's massive because he led the league in goals, he led the league in power play goals, he led the league in game-winning goals, and somehow he didn't even get into the Hart conversation, even though he was my number one pick. But moving on from that, if he's there, they'll be okay. I think David Kasha is the one that they're not going to have, which he's like an extra player, I think, for them at this point. But they all could be there. It could be Boston. It could be Washington. It could be Pittsburgh. That was a tough one for me. Pre-season, before all the COVID stuff, I picked Washington against Carolina. No, I picked Carolina. Washington against Colorado, with Colorado taking it all. And, I still could see that scenario. And I kind of feel like I should be stubborn and not pick against myself. So I'm probably going to still stick with that.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, that's played out, and the way that Colorado has stepped up from last year, I got to say that you saw that coming. You were on top of that more than most people. They took a step forward, and as much as I, as a lifelong Wings fan, loathe them, I got to say they really stepped up and had an even better year, a stepping stone year to where they're on the plausible short list to, God help me, lift the cup.
Yeah. So, yeah, that'll hurt you, I know.
Oh yeah. That'll be painful, as it would be if it was Pittsburgh. I mean, there's a couple teams on my poison list here. I don't know if it'll ever be as bad as it was back in what was it, 2001, New Jersey and Colorado. Like just shoot me, like one of these teams is going to win this.
I went to one of those games. That was before I was credentialed, but the NHL invited me to one of those games, and I still think that was a fun series, and there were some legendary players who played in it. It was Waugh against Brodeur. I mean, that's pretty good. Even you had to give a nod to say that, that's pretty good. There's some other fun things about these games people should know. So the referees actually, they're there already. They already got through their quarantine period, and they're actually going through like a mini camp to kind of, get back in shape, to kind of start skating around, to watching video and kind of taking orders from the league how they want to call. The league certainly doesn't talk about that, and so, everybody's going to have their own specific thoughts about, are they going to swallow the whistle or are they going to call everything? We know all those things that sometimes happen, sometimes don't. But they have like 20 referees. 20. So for all these people, and I'm going to say New York market and Philly market are very prone to this. I think even the Detroit market, if they were in it, is prone to this as far as habitually complaining about certain reps. You can't really do that in this one because it's no longer, for this year, it is no longer they're there on merit and there's only a certain amount. They've got 20.
Right. Well, I'll still be whining about Peter Forsberg getting away with flopping till the day they put me in the ground. But I hear you on this talk about the officiating and how that's being done. And again, there are just so many different aspects of this thing that are completely unique. And the caveat that I've been using recently is, and for this overall moment in time, one like we've never seen before. Hopefully we never see again. Like, hopefully 2 years from now there's not another virus that puts us back in the same spot. And, once is enough. But, again, and this is a thing where, I think anybody with any kind of conscience has to feel weird about saying this because of the terrible societal toll that is attached to all of this. But having said that, in both the NBA and the NHL, this is giving us something where it is going to be a unique experience, one that we're always going to remember, one that, as you said, the TV might be better in some ways with the presentation. And this is a unique kind of a thing that, in the midst of a very terrible time, we really can treasure, particularly if they make it all the way through this sumbitch, which, again, fingers crossed on that. Every time a guy like Sweet Lou Williams breaks the quarantine down in Orlando, it gets a little further away from happening. Hopefully that doesn't happen in Toronto and or Edmonton. But, this is definitely going to be something unique. It's going to be different. It's going to be some really, really competitive hockey, and as is always the case, once you get further into this thing, very high-level hockey.
There's some shenanigans going on. Like, a perfect red herring is Brad Marchand saying, yeah, there's going to be some sloppy hockey and everything else. He is setting that up. Anytime Brad Marchand says something like that, he knows it's going to be the opposite.
Yeah.
Like, he knows that. He probably already has an idea that his guys are pretty with it. They just need to get a game or two to get in touch with themselves, and they're going to be fine, and that's why he's saying the opposite. He's already playing mind games. Never, ever believe Brad Marchand. That's a fact.
Well, I just hope some reporter had been there to ask him the follow-up question, like, what, you mean like guys biffing their shift changes?
Yeah.
See, and as you could probably guess, Russ, I don't like Brad Marchand of the Boston Bruins, so I had to get that in there. I have said that, one of the things that I might like to do once this thing is all done, once this crisis is behind us, a great way to celebrate, I would say, would be to drive up to the Boston area with endless amounts of rolls of quarters and just walk into bars and play $10 worth of Gloria in every sports bar I walk into.
That's pretty funny. That's an interesting one. I like that.
Thank you. And I gotta say too, FDH Lounge Dignitary Chris Galloway, who in his defense is a transplanted Rhode Islander. So he's got he lives here, but he's also a child, so he's got allegiances both ways. And so he was happily pointing out on Facebook the other day about Portnoy getting the interview at the White House. Hey, it's the president and El Presidente. Whereupon you would have been proud of me, Russ. I replied on there. I said, that guy is typical child trash. I wish there'd been a guy with a bullhorn outside the White House gates yelling in there about the 2017 and 2018 NBA Eastern Conference Finals.
Thank you. I mean, if you want to talk about moron television, that's what that was. I'm sure of it.
I am not a Portnoy guy or Barstool guy by any stretch of the imagination.
Neither am I.
He and his minions have gone from dropping N-bombs on players at Fenway Park to now getting Rose Garden interviews. So there you go.
I mean, they're not even credentialed in certain leagues because the leagues are sick of them, and the president gives them an invite. Like, come on, man.
Yeah. I am not. I am not a Portnoy guy. I am not a guy who is for anything about Child Nation in any sport, including this one. So I will certainly be hoping that the Bruins aren't lifting the cup at the end. I mean, I have a lot of teams I hate in this. Let's be perfectly honest. Boston, Colorado, Pittsburgh. I mean, I could be facing some dire choices.
They're going to be good, though, man. They've got a great goalie tandem. They're going to be good. I mean, the best goalie tandem might be the Vegas Knights. I mean,
yeah.
Even if Fleury were to not be good, they've got Robin Leonard. I mean, they could actually make a run here too. I mean, wouldn't shock me.
Yeah, they could. I've got them drawing Edmonton in the second round. I've got that one going 5, but Edmonton going over. I mean, that would certainly be an epic series right there.
Yeah, that would be a good series. Edmonton defense is so much better. It's like night and day. Tippett really has them playing well. He's got Ryan Nugent-Hopkins playing really terrific defense. But also, their penalty killer.
Right.
Like, these are the things that Tippett has always preached, and you would know that because, you've watched enough Western games, but he's really got them going in that regard. Do they have the best goaltending? No. So I don't think Edmonton would beat Vegas. I don't think.
It's, again, with the explosiveness of the offense, that's what I'd be betting on under the circumstances. And, yeah, they don't, you're right that they do not have what it takes to get through this field
I'm not a big Koskinen guy. I don't think Koskinen's that good. And it's, you know, we're going to be talking Mike Smith. I think we've all seen enough of Mike Smith to know.
We have, but I will say this, again, much like how you saw Colorado taking a big step forward this year, I was calling for a big come-up from Edmonton because I thought, again, they had too much talent to be kind of floundering as they were the previous year. So it has really kind of turned around for them, and for them to be in the picture here. And again, hosting one of the two sites, it is going to be phenomenal. But we will look to hopefully shoot back with you on the preview of the Stanley Cup Final. As I keep saying for these things here,
can't wait. We'll cross our fingers though, because as we know in this world right now, anything can happen.
Russ, you anticipated me perfectly. I was just about to say, in any of these things here, it's always the next segment is going to be either Requiem for a Season or Stanley Cup Finals preview, and that's kind of where we are. I mean, we'll either be recapping why it didn't come off, or previewing hopefully what will be a great and exciting final and a capstone to quite a period of time here. And again, this is going to be just a remarkable spectacle, once in a lifetime. And as I'm saying, hopefully it stays that way. Hopefully we don't have to go back to this playbook in subsequent years, because I don't think any of us could take any of that on any level. But in the meantime, a lot of great hockey ahead, and a lot of things to kind of distract us from our woes and maybe help us deal with it a little bit better as we go along. We can only hope. But certainly we can file in that basket any of these conversations with you, Russ. Always a pleasure to have you on. And again, you've always, we talked about this a lot on the show, and we've done a lot of dedicated segments on your books. Take a minute here before we wrap and just talk about what is the latest and greatest going on for you in that regard.
Sure. Sticks and Stones is my latest and greatest. It's a book on college hockey, how it prepares people for life. Steve Carell from The Office is in there because he was a Division III goalie. Quinn Hughes and Cale Makar, two of the top picks for the Calder, are in there. So it's chock full of great profiles and a lot of fun stuff. Did it with Adam Woden. Also, Baseball's Best Rookies, second edition is out. That's really great. We added guys like Bryce Harper and Shohei Ohtani and Jacob deGrom. Got to add Jacob deGrom, right? I couldn't add Pete Alonso because the way this book release was going to go, if I waited on Pete Alonso, because you can't put him in and hope that he wins it, even though we thought he would. Right. Because what if he didn't? Then all of a sudden, you've got a book with the long-trended information. Yeah, true. The digital part, right? So that would be embarrassing, right? So you can't do it. So, but that's out. And then Pioneers of Baseball is still out. That one I really like to push because it's baseball the way it was meant to be, not this baseball that we are sort of stuck with now. Even though I still love baseball, but it's from the 1890s to the early 1900s. Just some great old players in there. A lot of players from your neck of the woods in the Ohio, Cleveland area for sure. Yep. So that's something where people can check it out. We also, in that book, I talked about, and that book is just me. That one's all me. Talked about some of the ballpark food back then. Talked about how the United States was back then. Mark Twain was one of the biggest names in baseball as far as being a fan and a guy who actually wanted to be an umpire besides, being a great writer. So a lot of fun stuff like that. Yeah, and again, Napoleon Lajoie, glad to know that he was, of course, in the book there. That was one of the first things I asked you about, and I think I've mentioned this to you before. But last year, my brother came up to town and wanted to do a lot of stuff with me, go a bunch of places we'd never gone before. And one of the places was the refurbished League Park, and got to see it. And I was there. It turns out Saturday's the only day of the week when you can get in there. And they have like a little museum on site with stuff there, and got in there and took a bunch of pictures. And it was just a wonderful kind of a thing. Our friend and fellow dignitary Steve Callis, I guess a previous time, he actually managed to sneak in, I guess either on the field or somewhere like that. So he did me one better. But these places,
Yeah. I mean, these places are just, it's amazing that any of them continue to exist in any form or fashion. And again, books like yours, of course, will point people towards things like that and wanting to seek them out, and that is a great thing. So we will see how everything plays out, Russ Cohen. Fingers crossed that we make it through this hockey season here, with the postseason, I should say. And then, like I said, that would lead us to a Stanley Cup final preview to next Talk Hockey on the show. I look forward to that. I thank you for being here, and I thank you, everybody, for tuning in to FDH Lounge Mini episode 1257.